Three Englishmen, two Irishmen, and a Cayman villain who's readying himself for a hurricane meet online on Zoom. This is Talk of the Trinity. Sorry about the punchline.
First to pick yourself up off the ground until you get lost. You'll never be found, and you can't start again until you break down. Break down.
Hello and welcome to the latest edition of Talk of the Trinity podcast. I'm still Baz Barrett. With me, as always, is Mr. Trinity himself, Will Forrest. And because it's International Week, we thought what better thing to do than completely ignore all international football going on at the moment and have a Villa special, delving into what has been going on at Villa Park and certain away grounds during the course of the season to date. Have a look back and a look forward and ask our esteemed listeners whether the prediction that me and Will made of Villa coming 8th in the Premier League this season is looking more foolish by the week or inspired. And speaking of inspired, it's not just me and Will who will be guiding you through all things Villa this week, because we are having a little nod to International Week. I mean, Will's got his international cap on for those on our YouTube and, well, our audio channel, actually, because I won't be able to see he's wearing a cap. YouTube will be, their eyes will be blocked. He's had a call up from Mars to play in centre midfield. But speaking of call ups, we've got our international guest this week, and representing England is Mr. Aston Villa himself, Captain Fantastic, Connor Sherry. So great to have you on again, Connor. Thanks for joining us on this fine evening at time of recording. Representing Ireland is Dave Scott from the Irish Lions, or as Will calls him, Dave Martinez Dance Dave. So great to have you back on, Dave. Representing World Cup host Qatar is Liam of the Qatar Lions, also representing Ireland as well. And representing the Cayman Islands, the dedication of this man to this podcast and Aston Villa generally is, at time recording, a hurricane is heading the way of the Cayman Islands. But is that stopping Russell Homer joining us this evening? Absolutely not. I mean, if the screen goes black, we know why. Turn on the news and see it from there. But a World Cup group, England, Ireland, Qatar, Cayman Islands, even England in this terrible run of form would still fancy their chances of getting out of that World Cup group. But if you wish to speculate on that whilst looking at all the latest Villa news, you can check out our Twitter page at Talk Trinity, whereby many a serious and not so serious poll will no doubt follow this evening's episode. Or you can check out Will's garish hats and other costumes from the past on our YouTube channel, Talk of the Trinity. Or if you just like a sedate listen to all our exotic and not so exotic accents, then you can check out our audio providers, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, Google. We're on FanHub, maybe some other places. But enough of where you can check us out after the show, because you're already in with us for this Aston Villa special look back, look forward this season. And because we're an optimistic podcast, despite what Will would say about me being negative, Baz, we're going to start with a positive question in terms of, I mean, the season is relatively early. You might have to even then scramble around a little bit. But I'm going to start with you, Liam. What has been your positive moment of the season for Villa so far?
There's not been too many of them. I think the formation and the kind of moment of enlightenment against the City team and the performance that we put in there, I think was definitely something that we were all very proud of and thought that was going to be the turning point. I think we saw the counter formation, which I think suits us better. We've seen Leon Bailey kind of in that wide position. We've seen a defensive setup that kind of suits Villa's style an awful lot better. I'm loving what I've seen of Kamara so far. Unfortunately, he looks like he's out for 2 months, and the World Cup maybe has come at a good time for Aston Villa. Maybe not so for France, that we will maybe not miss as many games as we thought. But yeah, that was definitely the highlight. A very, very solid performance against an in-form Man City and an in-form Haaland. So definitely there was a highlight for me so far.
No, I think the fact it was so unexpected really was a positive. And even during the game when Haaland scored, I think there was a collective feeling amongst the Villa faithful of, well, that was nice while it lasted for 50 minutes. But yeah, we came back, as you said, Bailey, showing glimpses. I mean, maybe we need to get his agent to mouth off on Twitter more if that is going to inspire him to some good performances. But speaking of inspiration, has anything else been inspiring you at Villa this season, Connor?
I think to be honest, I agreed with Liam. I think that the two games what definitely what I saw the most, so back in the park, was definitely Everton and Man City. I think them two games was probably the most positive so far this season. I feel like when we play against top teams normally, I just feel like we have more determination, more aggression when we're on the pitch and everyone's together. But I think when it comes to terms of playing lower teams or mid-table teams, it seems like we don't really get at it. And I think that's what we still need to work on, in my opinion. But, I can't get too carried away already where we are in the table. But I know there's been two big blows so far with Kamara recently and Luca Digne. But, we've got cover. Hopefully Nakamba or something can get to be the replacement for Kamara, and then for left back at Gustafsson. So give him a little chance, see what he's like, and yeah, just hope for the best really for the coming months after the World Cup and see how we get on this.
I would say any more injuries and Gilbert might be getting a game. The way this is going. Good job we got him in the squad. Though I'm going to make my first. I didn't think I'd say this sentence actually when I got up this morning. I'm going to make my first attempt at going to a hurricane zone. And Russell, are there any other positive shoots of life you've seen from Villa so far this season?
Yeah, I love the question because the trend is poor and there are plenty of negatives. It's not just negative Baz. There's plenty of negatives to pick out of all of the first 7 league games plus the League Cup game. But if I could pick 2 positives, can I pick one off the pitch, one on the pitch? My favourite positive off the pitch was enjoying a number of cold drinks post Villa West Ham with Baz himself in the bombs, where Baz just out of the blue just threw his pint all over himself, tried to drown himself. And
yeah, if I talk about drown your sorrows, I mean it was a pretty terrible game, so I had to do what I had to do.
Good follow up, exactly. You were doing that, and then on the pitch, few and far between. I'm going to go for Dougie's corners, because it's marvelous, it's fun, and B, I was lucky enough to be at the Emirates. I was standing right behind Dougie when he took it, standing right on the line of the goal line, as it were. So just followed the ball in my island. It was brilliant. And it gave us that 2 minutes of hope where we were 1-1.
I'm going to say, Dougie's corners just sound like a food truck at the high end, in terms of, so if it doesn't work out for him on the field. But I think we got Dougie's corners in just before the Cayman Islands line went, but we will get back to Russell a little later on. He's still there. The dramatic return. I mean that was a quicker comeback than Arsenal's second goal in that game. But Dave, carrying on this positive momentum that we've got here, any other positive moments so far standing out for you?
So I have to kind of not just say the Man City game. It's very hard to see past that, and Liam will relate to this. There was back when English World Cup winner Jack Charlton managed Ireland, there was something that became known as an Irish victory. An Irish victory was usually a 1-1 draw against stronger opposition, and we'd usually go down by 1 and get this equaliser, and we're jumping in the streets, I am going to go for a moment in that game. So we got back to our winning position of 1-1, and Emi Martinez getting a terrible injury, and then back on his feet, hoofing the ball down. It's that kind of shithousery we need. And I'm sorry, I've just lost our PG-13 rating. But we need a player like that. We need to have just someone to be a bit cynical and take the heat out of the games. You saw when he went down, all the Man City players go, "Oh, for goodness, come on, ref," and and he's like, "Well, what can I do?" He's says he's got cramps. So, and it was just this moment of thinking, we can actually do this. We can get this 1-1, and who knows, maybe better.
Southampton as well, Dave.
He did it against Southampton, yeah. Probably the only highlight of the game, apart from the goal. Yeah. So the two moments were against Man City and Southampton. Those shocking injuries for Emi Martinez, but it's just what we need. A little bit of something extra to get us over the line in these games, and we've been lacking that for years. So I'm gonna, unsurprisingly, highlight of the season, go for Martinez as my candidate. But yeah, he's done it twice, and I'm wondering at what stage do the referees begin to cotton on to it and give him a yellow card. But hopefully they'll forget about it now after the international break, and he'll get away with it a few more times.
Yep, it's been a while. Short memory. We need some more Martinez moments, and I agree, some shithousery. Like, that is what we need all over the field. It's just start from the back, work its way through the middle, and that's a perfect link to Will. So, Will, what's your moment of the season? Positive moment of the season so far, apart from getting that cap? I mean, that is a delight.
Found it on Jake's floor, to be honest with you, mate. So I've got two moments as well. One of them I've only just realised is my favourite moment because I've just heard about it, and that's the fact that you spilt a pint all over yourself. That's amazing.
It was.
I can't believe you didn't tell me, but I can believe you didn't tell me at the same time.
No, we're not a physics show, but I would say in terms of my trousers did get very wet. But I still had most of the pint left in the glass, so I don't really know how that happened in terms of physics. If we got any physics professors listening, how do you get so wet from such a small amount of liquid? That's a different show.
Chemistry and biology more than physics, mate. But there we go.
I don't think it's I think biology is a different problems.
Some clouds, some geography teachers might tell you.
You're obviously very excited to be in Russell's company, but why wouldn't you be? For me, I'm going to again veer away from Man City. I'm going to veer away from Dougie's corner treats. Tyrone Mings' performances ever since coming back into the team, I think he's been one of our better players. Probably our player of the season so far. In many ways, he's been commanding. He's let his game do the talking for him. Steven Gerrard said, "You need to look me in the eyes and show me that you're ready and get back out onto that pitch." And you look at the way that he's played. The mistakes for goals have tended to be other people on the pitch. He put in that crucial tackle on Rondon against Everton in the very last minute. Haaland was in his pocket against Man City. He's probably handled Haaland better than anybody else has this year. So the way that Tyrone Mings has bounced back, if you want to say bounce back, and led by example without even wearing the armband, I'll give it to a marvellous Mings as my positive so far this season.
Yep, and during the course of this show, we are going to have a feature whereby each of the people on the panel are going to ask an undisclosed secret question to somebody else on the panel about anything Villa related. And because you mentioned Tyrone Mings, that does link in perfectly into the question I had for the panelist drawn out of the virtual hat for me to ask my question, which was Mr. Captain Fantastic himself, Connor Sherry. So, Connor, my question is, in terms of being a captain, you know about the influence that a captain can have, and the early part of the season was dominating, maybe the wrong word, but there was a lot of talk about the fact that Tyrone Mings was stripped of the captaincy and John McGinn was given it instead. In terms of how the season has started so far, which we've started talking about all the positives, but if you look at the table, not great. Do you, as a being a captain, being in a dressing room, in terms of perhaps captaincy changes you've seen and been involved in, do you think the change of captain near the start of the season from Mings to McGinn affected the way Villa have started the season, or is it really window dressing in terms of who the captain was, and the problems that we've had on the field would have been there even if Mings was captain?
I think there was a possibility over in the summer when Gerrard eventually came out saying to Tyrone Mings, "I'm sorry, Tyrone, you was our captain last season, you've been great, but this is my decision. I want to try to go someone different." And obviously he's gone with McGinn, which at first I was kind of like, I was interested about it because to me, with McGinn, I just felt like, yeah, he's good all over the pitch, but like a few games this season I went to Villa Park, and I think to myself, when McGinn's on the pitch, he doesn't really talk a lot to his teammates. And that's a bit of a bad issue. And I think I've said this before in the other podcast, like as a captain, you got to be a leader a lot from example. You have to talk throughout the game to your teammates, and especially Gerrard himself. So I think that's the improvement what McGinn needs to do more is definitely that. But, with Mings, he had a bit of a shaky start. I know he was having a few problems, but for a few games now, he's been absolute class. Especially the one what Will said earlier about the Man City game. He was literally all over Haaland. And Haaland is one of the world-class strikers in world football right now. And from that performance I saw from Mings, yeah, super duper. And, hopefully Mings can carry on with his form and hopefully get into the England squad, hopefully before the World Cup starts. But yeah, and I think that's my thought about captaincy, to be honest. Yeah, good question anyway.
I'm going to say, looks like the England squad could do with all the help it can get based on recent Nation League performances. But to have my highlight of the season, positive moment, was when the ref blew his full-time whistle at the end of the Villa Southampton game. One, because we won, and two, because it brought to an end probably one of the worst games of football I've ever seen in my life. But, positive, negative. Speaking of positives, going to try and continue the positive energy as long as we can. And mentioned the impact that Kamara has had since he's joined the club. Does anybody have anybody else apart from Kamara for their signing of the season so far? Or is it a unanimous Kamara?
I've got one. It's a bit of a cheat one, but technically we signed Ashley Young for an additional season. And with a bit of bad luck, Matty Cash getting injured, we've seen since that moment he came on in that match, Man City, he's been great. So a bit of a cheat there, but I'd also say we've seen the square root of NAF, all of our new signings, 120 minutes of Diego and only a few games of Booba. So I think before the World Cup break, if you ask the question at that point, as we break up mid-November, I reckon Dendoncker might be solid and unspectacular that he can prove to be a man, especially with him at the back, in front of the back four, as it were. So I'm looking forward to seeing Dendoncker a lot.
I'm going to say in terms of Dendoncker transfer deadline day signing, I'll throw the question out there. If Villa would have started the season better, do you think we would have signed him?
No, we would have signed him.
I was presuming that Gerrard thought, I could lose Douglas Luiz here. Better bring someone in quickly. So surprised when we didn't offload him. But considering what happened to Boubacar Kamara, it actually looks inspirational. At least we have someone to come in for Kamara for the next couple of months. So fingers crossed he'll ask that question at the halfway point, and we'll be all saying, "Jeepers, good job we signed Dendoncker."
No, but in terms of his scene by most Wolves fans I've spoken to, is doing a fairly solid job. for
I
Wolves.
think he scored against us as well, which is what all signings. We always sign people who score against us. Mustafa Hadji scores a bunch of Coventry City goals against us. We sign him and he's useless. But anyway.
So, no, Liam, you excited by Jan Bednarak?
To be honest, I don't know a whole pile about him. And by the sounds of the noise coming off Twitter, Southampton fans were pretty happy to get rid of him. But hard to say that about an international, Polish international. I don't know a whole pile about him at all. I know friend of the pod, Gareth, who's been on before, has done some comparisons of statistics wise on him. I think he was comparing Bednarak and that Kaleta that ended up signing for Southampton. I have no idea. I think it's a decent backup, but I can't imagine we'll see a whole pile of games of him. I think the right back situation. I think now that we've seen Luca Dean out, we could potentially see Young go over to the left side, and maybe, like you said, Gilbert come in, or even Chambers. And if Chambers goes to the right, then we might see Bednarak a lot more than we maybe thought we were going to see him. But yeah, probably a decent signing on the last day. But again, yeah, I don't know a whole pile about him to be getting too excited by.
I'm not going to say that.
So I've got to admit that I've got on my sister's side, that side of the family, a number of Southampton season ticket holders. So chatting to them was useful. Yeah, and expectations. He's not the defender who's going to Beckenbauer his way out of defence and set a counter attack in motion, but he's very strong in the air, apparently, and he's to intercept any attacking play with he shows is brilliant. So I'm enthused that we've got somebody there, having lost Diego. You don't know how Diego's injury, the recovery from his injury might take him. He might get fit, but then he's got to get match fit. Even when you're match fit, it takes him a while to get settled back into the Premier League. So it could be end of February before we're seeing the best of Diego again. So yeah, I'm pleased we've got Bednarik.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like, as Liam alluded to, the back line for the Leeds game might be an interesting read, based on the potential injuries that we may have still by the start of October. I know we talked about it before the season, Will, in terms of Ashley Young signing, and you were all aboard the Ashley Young hype train. So because you must be like Russell, must be pretty pleased with what you've seen, because I think there was an element when he came on against Man City, a feeling of there could be a problem here, and it was a problem, but it was for Man City.
You know, sometimes it's tiring being right all the time, but you know, you take.
Good. So, have you got a very smart work colleague?
When you're as good and as great as me, you know, you have to carry that burden. But there we go. Yeah, Ashley Young, fantastic, wasn't he, against Manchester City? And it's nice to see that somebody who's 100% committed to the club captain, to wanting to be the best version himself that he can be, realises that he's not the wing wizard that we all know and love from years gone by. Has come in, playing right back somewhere where you never think to put Ashley Young. You know, there aren't many other positions that you wouldn't think to put him either. And he's come in, he's done a great job for us, especially when there's abundance of other talent who could have been playing right back instead. You know, Kessler Caden could have stayed. You've got Gilbert, who everybody loves Gilbert, don't they? He could have been there. Chambers could have been there. Conser could have been there. But Ashley Young has shown again that he's Mr. Reliable and doing a great job. Long may it continue.
Yep. No, in terms of a tagline like that, in terms of I'm always right, needs to be immediately rebutted in terms of the questions that we are asking our fellow panelists. We do have two lined up for you, and we're gonna double team now. We're gonna go straight in. So in a 1-2 combination, Liam, what was your question for Will about how Villa have been doing so far?
Oh, so mine wasn't about how Villa were doing. It was more a hypothetical question. So yesterday, saw Mark Noble return to West Ham in a sporting director capacity. If you could choose any previous Villa player to return in a similar capacity, who would it be and why?
That is a good question.
You know, straight away, the name that comes off the tip of my tongue is Gareth Barry, from who I've seen playing at the Villa. I think Gareth Barry's the best player I've seen play for Villa, apart from Grealish, who's a maverick. He's a different league of his own. Gareth Barry just had a coolness and a calmness, didn't he? You know, he was a club captain. He was a role model. He was somebody who always, very much like Ashley Young, always gave 100%. You could rely on him. And I think that behind the scenes, he'd be a very dependable member of the backroom staff. He's got that knowledge of football. He's played at an elite level for Manchester City in times, winning the Premier League and winning a number of cups. So why wouldn't you want somebody like him attracting the best players to your club? So I'd go Gareth Barry. Who would you have though, Leo? Who would you pick?
Yeah, Gareth Barry's probably the standout one. I like the idea of like Melberg, someone along that line who's kind of already got manager connections. I was going to say Dwight York, but probably thought that was best to keep that on the side. But yeah, I think Gareth Barry probably be everyone's standout one. But I do like the idea of Melberg and what he brings to the table and the no nonsense side of things. But yeah, it's an interesting one.
And so Melberg would have been my pick, but I'll open it up to the floor.
Yeah.
So in terms of Connor, who would your pick be for a former Villa player coming back as a coach?
The coach. Oh, okay. Well, there has been reports of Ashley Young doing his recently coaching badges, so we could actually potentially see him as in one of the first team coaching staff. And I think I would like to see that myself, to be honest. I think it'd be good for it. Help him a lot with his experience in the coaching role, get some advice from world-class managers, especially like, you know, Gerard, because he's a great player in his day. And yeah, I'd say Ashley Young.
Russell, same question for you.
I'm pretty sure I saw Mauricio Pochettino in our academy side before he moved back to Argentina to develop and develop. Can I pick him, please?
An inspired choice in more ways than one. And Dave, can you beat Pochettino?
Yeah, I can't find any. I just have a quick Google there. I can't find any record of that. But this is maybe a bit left of field. But the person I choose who just would strike me as someone who could be a very good coach would be James Milner. And the reason was because it was the years that he was in Villa. I mean, the two stints. Okay, the first one was under a certain Irish manager, and maybe the least said about that reign, the better. But the second, I mean, Martin O'Neill. I mean, he was the anchor of that midfield. And even when Gareth Barry decided to go to Man City, which I know Milner did as well, so I'm not having a dig there. It was like he really did rally the troops, and he managed to fit in there. But also then, two of the other things. One, he's actually still playing. He's 36, so he knows a lot about conditioning. He knows, and he's still doing a job for Liverpool. And then he hasn't been mouthing off in the press, because you think, oh well, Gabby was a great player for us, but Gabby's been kind of, doing the talk sport kind of, a shock jock kind of thing. Miller hasn't been doing any of that, to be honest. So I think he'd be a really good role model for young players coming through, a good influence to keep the head down and keep working. So I'd go with James Milner.
Yeah, I think that's a good choice as well. Though, speaking of good choices, Russell, you're up for your question for Mr. Trinity himself. Let's hit him with your question.
For Will, because between ourselves, we've had plenty of messes back and forth over a season or two, and we all know Will does love Danny Ings, and personally, as a football fan, I admire what he's achieved in the game for sure. Just look at his record against a horrible injury, coming back from a horrible injury, and all of that. So the question is, what for Will, as a lover of Danny Ings, what do you feel Danny Ings can add to this Villa team setup?
Oh. Well, you'd hope it'd be goals, wouldn't you, more than anything else that he can add? I mean, for me, and I've said it before, and I know that I'm bumming off Danny Ings here, and the PG-13's gone, so I can say that. Yeah. That's fine. Danny Ings, for me, when he's better as a two-man strike force, isn't he? I think we know that from his days at Southampton, his days at Burnley before and whatnot. He adds that he has the quality that we need between the lines, between a striker and between a midfielder. He's a poorer man's Harry Kane in many ways, in the fact that you look at some of the assists that he got last season, Leeds away, the crossover to Matty Cash, the assist for Leon Bailey's goal against Everton, and then adding in the other goals that he scored himself. He's very much a predator in the box. It's just a shame that I don't think we've seen the best of him. But given a run of form in the correct formation, I still believe that he's the striker to help fire us up the league. And I think he'll bring the best out of Ollie Watkins and Cameron Archer as well going forward. And I think his legacy at Villa actually may be how much he helps those two to improve their games with what he does on the training field with them and in the few matches that they play up front with one another.
Do you think he fits in our system, Russell? Or what do you think he could bring in your view?
In a loaded question sort of way was in our present squad, and the fact that we've got so much talent in the middle, in the attacking midfield, or the middle of the midfield, so much talent there. Can we afford to play with two up front? And I don't disagree with anything Will said about what he can bring in a two up front. And we've seen the results. We've seen some good results when we've had Ollie and Danny up front. But I do concern myself that he's not the type of player to hold on to the ball, a striker in our squad who will hold on. Yeah, he's got a few tricks, but he's not going to hold on to the ball as much as I'd like our striker, single or dual striker, to do. And then we lose the ball far too often in the attacking third, in the defense's last third. We lose the ball so many times, and the pressure straight back on Ollie as much as Ollie, our attacking midfielders, and Danny holding onto the ball well enough. So it was a loaded question because I did pre-frame by saying you've got to admire a guy who does that, has done that at the top level. It's their top wanting to had a injury and all of that sort of stuff. So he's done very well as a career. He'll look back on his career and he'll say, "Yeah, tick, brilliant." But
I think I'm a little bit
simple
when it comes to striker. I'm not just a little bit simple. I'm a little bit simple when it comes to strikers. And whilst you need those players who can hold the ball up, I'd much rather just have somebody sniffing in around the penalty box.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? But you're right. The modern game has evolved so much that you need a striker who can hold the ball up, run the channels, who can do everything an attacking midfielder or a winger can do, as well as score the goals. Sometimes it's a bit like that Little Britain sketch. Write the theme tune, sing the theme tune, put the crosses in and score the goals from the crosses, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, it's certainly, I'd say one of the bigger changes in football probably the last 15, 20 years is the preconception that the striker's job solely is to score goals. And, you know, in terms of that penalty box poacher, I mean, you could say, you know, in terms of where began to change a little bit, Ruud van Nistelrooy at Man United, his goal scoring record, brilliant at Man U. Fergie got him out. People scratching their heads thinking he scores all those goals. Why would you want to get rid of him? A couple of years later, front line of Rooney, Ronaldo, Tevez, go and win the Champions League. And that was, I suppose, in England at least, I suppose, the start of the current move, which is full circle with the top teams now in terms of not necessarily goals being the be-all and end-all, which is a bit strange in terms of, especially in English football, whereby the penalty yard poacher has a long-standing pedigree in the English top flight, which I suppose is probably why, or one of the reasons why the English football team never won anything. Well, we won one thing you may remember. I think it was 66. I think we won something. But there was no surprise that we were going to get a Danny Ings reference in. I mean, if there wouldn't have been a question on it, Will would have made sure that Danny Ings came up. But we're going to move to surprises now. And Dave, and it can be a good surprise, can be a bad surprise, whichever way you want to look at it. What has been your biggest surprise so far of the season for Villa?
The disparity, and I shouldn't be surprised, but the disparity between pre-season and the actual from the first day on. For whatever reason, I was around a lot actually in the summer, so I managed to actually watch most of the pre-season games. One was on Premier Sports, another one I think I watched on their own website. So I actually saw most of those games, and we were looking decent. And I heard about how Jared needed that pre-season to mould us all together, and Ian Bailey looked good. So I don't want to lower the mood here, but I honestly didn't see the start we had coming, and our inability to break down Bournemouth on the first day in the game I did watch. After watching all our pre-season, I went from hopeful, as you do as a Villa fan, to just oh no, this isn't good. And I'm looking at, I think there was only 2 senior defenders there for Bournemouth, and we couldn't break them down. And I just immediately thought, this is bad. And I'm sorry to bring us on a downer, but it really is the surprise of how off the pace we were, and how once again I have to remind myself, don't go by pre-season. Just don't.
But no, how about you, Connor? What's been your biggest surprise of the season so far?
I'm not going to lie. I think I did kind of agree with what Dave was saying, and I've got to be honest. Like pre-season, well, we was really, really good winning most of the games, and then Leon Bailey, massive surprise on that as well. Thought, he's going to be some kind of a player in his second season, and see what happens. But with the Bournemouth game as well, I really thought, oh no, we're going to win this, definitely, because Scott Parker up behind the city, he wasn't really happy at Bournemouth. He couldn't really find a lot of players, and they was going a hard time. And then for some reason we just lost 2-0, and I thought to myself, can't be doing that against Bournemouth, who just recently got promoted, because that happened last season before we played Watford, and that was another promoted team, and we lost against them as well. So hopefully that won't be the curse, like at the start of the season in the Premier League. But some matches was positive, as what I said from earlier, with the Everton Man City, but then other games mostly got outplayed really bad. Communication wasn't there at all with all the players. It was just inconsistency. That was the big issue as well last season. I think for this season coming up, we need to step into on that as well to get better at that. So that's my thought.
I'd say even though the season hadn't started before we played Bournemouth, it was a very Villa thing to do, to go and lose to a team who were going to get banged 9-0 and sack the manager in a couple of weeks' time. Though, Liam, any positive surprises for you, or was it a negative one for you as well?
Yeah, it's a negative one. I think some of the players that we've let go out on loan, I think Tim would have been a really good addition in and around the squad. Of just seeing while we were live, he has scored for England from the 20s, I think, and they're beating Morocco at the moment. I think Caden Kessler going out on loan was surprising when we looked kind of quite weak on the right-hand side in regards to like-for-like players at Matt Cash. I know Ashley Young's come in and done well, but I think the lack of Cameron Archer has probably surprised quite a few people. We're not seeing him being utilised at all. He's getting the last 3 or 4 minutes, which is nowhere near what he needs to enforce himself on the game. And I don't really know what way to look at that. Is it an oversight from Villa in the sense that they didn't want him to go out on loan and kind of get minutes there and kind of keep that conference run going? Or is there something else going on that we're not quite seeing, because he wasn't even part of the squad in the last match against Southampton? So I think that's probably been the biggest surprise for me. I think Dave's one's probably the one that's on the tip of everyone's tongue. But yeah, the youth, the way we've used the youth has probably been the biggest surprise.
Yeah, certainly with Archer, it's been a bit of a head scratcher, because, as you say, it's in terms of the point of sending players out on loan is if they're not going to get games at Villa, to make sure that they continue their development like he did at Preston. So keeping him around not to play him, that is a bit of a surprise. And yeah, I mean, I think in some of the early games I would have started him, which probably shows how much I know. But Amanda knows a lot more than me. Russell, any positive surprises for you, or has it also been negative as well?
I think I've got to fall back on the old adage that it's not the despair. I can cope with the despair of our terrible results. It's the hope that kills you, because it wasn't just the hope of, and I saw every pre-season game live on the Villa TV or whatever. We also got our business done early with some tremendous signings. There was so much positivity around the club, having signed a CDM who seemed the ticket with his, you look at his stats, and as a defender who turned away Champions League football, a central defender, to come and play for Villa. The hope was massive pre-season. And I'll pile in on the general comments that have been made, that my surprise is our style of play. The shape is impotent. It's some of the most boring Villa football I've watched for many a year. Our shape, our slow and intricate passing with, limited number of passes in any sequence before we do pile it up front. But it's been most, that's my surprise, that Gerrard and everyone, many people have been saying, he doesn't yet come up with a consistent first 11, and it's his seemingly it's his lack of knowledge of our best 11, which many people have said. But I'll specifically tie in a specific surprise, but again, you might call it, you can't call it, it definitely is a negative. Pre-season, Leon Bailey looked fantastic, many of the games that I saw. In the Premier League, in terms of his final ball, his decision-making is dreadful. You can do all the fancy running and everything else, but it's the end ball that matters and counts. And it hasn't been good enough from Leon Bailey. Fantastic goal against Man City. Great, very good. But come on, Leon, you're better than that. Allied to his stepfather agent coming out with such a pile of garbage quotes about against the Villa just really upsets me. And then on the pitch, Leon, you've disappointed me as a surprise, a massive negative prize compared to what I saw pre-season.
Yeah, I mean the stats for the Southampton game didn't make particularly enjoyable reading, didn't he? And like losing I lost count at 25. I think in terms of the amount of times he lost the ball, I think in terms of it was pretty mad, and then it wasn't a surprise to see him taken off with about 25 minutes to go. But self-styled positive Will, if ever there was positivity needed in terms of a surprise of the season, it is now. So this is, but to use an American sports metaphor, this is bottom of the ninth. Bases are loaded. Need to go and hit that home run. Have you got a positive surprise for the season, or is it going to be a clean sweep for negativity?
So I've got two for you. So one of them I learnt about it in the last half hour, and that's that you spilled a pint down yourself. That's a nice surprise. That's amazing.
It was.
Right at himself like this.
You're never going to live that down with me. You know that.
Sorry, Baz.
Well, I think in terms of boring football, I think I just had said that the football I'd seen in that West Ham game was the most boring since Paul Lambert. So I think in terms of if that is going to make anybody lose their senses, then I think that's a pretty good shout. But there you go. Number two then, Will.
Okay, so surprise, a positive surprise, and I think most Villa fans would say, especially when you look at the results that we got this season, Man City at home, that was a surprise. I think everybody had said we were going to get thumped. You're listening to Talk Sport, you're listening to all the media around.
Which one of the six of us predicted Villa to win? It's only one of us predicted Villa to win that match. I know I was wrong, but what was your prediction for that, Will?
I think it's about 4-1 Man City, to be honest with you.
Exactly. But you're right. Every Villa fan, most man and woman and child expected exactly what you've just said. Just spot on.
and all of the media outlets said that we were going to get smashed and Haaland was going to get his third hat-trick in a row and that he was probably going to be 8-0. You had Villa fans saying, we'll lose 9-0, 10-0, whatever, that he wasn't going to be good, that it was going to be the end of Gerrard. And, I mean, we had a chat on our last podcast about the luck and the rub of the green that Gerrard's had with some of the fixtures recently and the results. But that 1-1 draw, because as much as it was that dour, dull, drop back, don't have too much of the ball, hit teams on the counter-attack football, and that's what we had to do against Man City, and we had to be aggressive against them to actually draw 1-1, to see it over the line, and also to have a couple of other chances and reduce their chances as well. I can't really remember Martinez having to make too many saves. I can remember Kyle Walker had an effort at the start and De Bruyne hit the crossbar, but we were getting forward. JJ looked fantastic in that game. Leon Bailey scored a wonder goal, and it's probably one of his best performances in a Villa shirt when he hasn't got injured during the game or played for only 10 minutes. Mings was fantastic. We really, really looked like a good team on that day. I'll be completely honest, and it's probably against what some or most Villa fans will say. I would quite happily, for the rest of this season, go back to not having much possession, hitting teams on the counter-attack, winning 1-0 or 2-1, and climbing up the league that way like Gerrard started, then worrying about attractive football. You don't always have to play attractive football. It's nice to pay an amount of money and think, right, I've got my pie, I've got my pint, and I'm going to be watching this sexy football in front of me. End of the day, I want 3 points, and I don't care if it comes off your cat's arse and goes into the top corner for the winner in the last minute. As long as we get those 3 points, that's all that matters,
So would you be playing that cat up front ahead of Danny Ings?
Let's get in the gut. No, I wouldn't. No.
No, but in terms of you have pulled out the positivity there, and for that you get to ask your question to another member of the esteemed panel, and your question you drew out of the hat was Dave. So, Will, what is your Villa question for Dave?
I know, Dave. I'm really sorry about this. My question is. It was going to be a bit of a weird one, and it isn't a weird one, really, but it is Villa related. So, past and present, of all the Villa players that you've seen, your missus says, right, I'm going out for the night. You can invite anyone round for a dinner party. You get to pick 4 Villa players, past and present. Who are they, and what are you cooking as well? Or you get takeaway, you know what I mean? Okay.
Who am I calling over? Okay, it's a great question. I'm calling over Steve Staunton, and it's more because I'm so intrigued to find out what's happened to him. And now I've heard rumours, and I won't go into them on the podcast. I don't think he's having the most salubrious lifestyle, is what I've heard. Because he's a Villa legend, absolutely two stints there, but then he was the Ireland manager, and it was a disaster, a real disaster, and he's completely disappeared. So I would love to just sit down with Steve Staunton and just talk about what the hell happened, and like, how are you and how do you feel and everything like that, because it's a very, very strange story. It's possibly worthy of a Netflix documentary. As I say, I won't say anymore, but I'm just very interested to find out kind of what's happened to him. So sorry, that's a bit of on a downer. My favorite players from years ago. Well, okay, that's one. Mark Bosnich, because he's going to be a lot of crack. Maybe I shouldn't say that, but he's going to bring. He might bring a lot of. Actually, sorry, my notes tell me I'm not allowed to finish that sentence. No, a legend from years ago, and mainly because I just remember him from that Tranmere Rovers penalty shootout. Oh my God, what an experience that was. So that's 2 of the old guard. That's from the year when I started supporting Aston Villa. Of recent times, he's been mentioned before. I'd ask Olaf Melberg simply because has he ever given a media interview? I've never seen. Some people are out there, so I'm not inviting Gabby. Sorry, this seems like I'm having a go at Gabby. But again, someone who's kept his words pretty much close to his chest. Hasn't
He
given.
must have, because he's got the best quote ever, Dave.
Yeah.
Sorry to
Yep.
interrupt.
Yeah.
About
Yeah.
you know the quote, yeah.
Yep.
About Birmingham City, yeah. I just don't like them.
Yeah, that's what I remember.
Fair enough.
So he must have been interviewed at some point.
Yeah, I just know because I know I've seen on other podcasts people like Martin Larson, Curtis Davies have done interviews, and never seen Olaf do there. So lots of questions for him, and then who would I go for recent times? I would probably. Oh, I'd have to go for someone like Benteke, and just because, again, all the goals he's scored, and kind of he might be able to talk about positive things, and he was the man up front. So just a complete kind of going through the ages of different Villa times, and I suppose Benteke was there at even though he was one of our best players, he was constant when there was a lot of different kind of comings and goings and ups and downs with the team. So that would be just for kind of reliving our main man at the time. That would be, I think, an interesting conversation. I'm kind of worried about that, but I've cast the die. They're the four that came. So Steve Staunton, Bosnich, Melberg, and Benteke. And what would I cook? God, I'd probably try to show off and be fancy and get one of these fancy vegan recipes that I'd never actually eat myself, but just to try and show that I was this hip kind of guy in the kitchen, on trend. So that's what I'd do.
Vegan cooking with Dave. That is the Netflix special that we know we needed. But
as well, though, Baz, that the entertainment would be Emi Martinez.
Dara's doing the dance,
in
yeah.
the corner. And as soon as Steve Staunton was sniffing around, getting involved, that you'd have to be FaceTiming Liam just for a little chat, get an autograph for him and whatnot. He'd be like, Dave, mate, what are you doing to me? You didn't give that ball.
The only reason why, obviously Martin was the first name that came into my head, but I wouldn't want to accidentally give him food poisoning for my dreadful cooking, which could happen. And then we'd be rightly screwed. So he can stay and pick up his bugs in Bodymore Heath. At least they can look after him there. But if he comes over and I poison him, we'd be in a bad way.
I think the highlight would be the reaction if you asked Olaf Melberg to help you with the dishes. I think it would be short, swift retribution going on there. But Dave's got his dinner party going on. A rival party going on for the rest of us. You can invite the same people. It'd turn into a Vicar of Dibley kind of special, having to go from one to the other. But quick whiz round the rest of us. Russell, you can invite one guest to this Villa party. Who are you inviting?
The man who probably lives closest to Dave. He hasn't picked him, Paul McGrath.
There we go. He's Will. Who are you bringing?
Oh, do you know? The one person who I would have over anybody else, Dave's already picked as well in Bozzy because of what an absolute legend he was. But if I've got to bring somebody else that's Aston Villa, and of course you all know who I'm going to go for here. Martin O'Neill, who I'd take, best manager of my time at the Villa, so I'd have Martin O'Neill.
There you go, Liam. How about you?
There's a lot of good guys being picked there, and there's a lot going through my head. But Juan Pablo has to come. He has to come and tell stories, and sexy man as well. So the two of us could have a nice wee picture together.
That would make Will jealous, I gotta say.
I'd love to have Gareth Southgate there just to pick his brains about what he is thinking. Juan Pablo wins.
I'm going to say, Southgate might have a lot of spare time after about the middle of December. so you might get him to do the cooking the way it might be going. Though, Connor, who are you bringing to the Fantasy Villa dinner party?
Is it just one after involved? Is it all? Can it be third? I might have to.
If they're both bringing a bottle, then they both get to come.
I think Gareth Barry. I'll go for Gareth Barry. Yes, Gareth Barry obviously was one of my Villa players growing up, and obviously I was mascot with him, so it'd be nice to see him again in person and have a good chat when I met him in the past, and obviously more advice as the captain. And yeah, I'll choose Gareth Barry.
So to be fair, if we were going to pick somebody here to actually organise the dinner party, if we're doing it seriously, it would be Connor with that kind of that contact list. That Connor's got a Villa royalty. I mean, that would be, you know, quite the dinner party organised there. And when we finished our dinner party, we've got the rest of the season to look forward to. Alluded, a bit more than alluded, to some of the slight negative things so far in the season for Villa, and we're gonna throw out the transfer window, pretend that isn't a thing, and we're gonna say, if you could bring in one player into Villa, well, I'm assuming you'd bring a player to go in the starting 11, but you don't have to. That you think is going to change the fortunes around of this Villa team, get us firing up the Premier League table. Russell, who would be your pick? And then I should say the rest of us will then judge whether we think that's a realistic pick. So unfortunately, we don't get to say.
He hasn't got to go very far. It's Rach Daly.
Okay. To be fair, looked good against Man City last week.
That first goal was simply outstanding, wasn't it? I just so enjoyed that, and she can also sing in the dressing room. She's an outstanding entertainer, but no, she's a top footballer. Serious answer. Given my comments earlier about our inability to keep the ball in the opponent's third, unrealistic signing. He hasn't done much other than a couple of games for Barcelona so far, but I wish we could get someone like Memphis to pay, but that's unrealistic. And then realistically, why not have another go in January to get Sarr from Watford? So would be my serious choice to try, because I think we've got so many clean sheets in the last couple of seasons. The key deficiency in our game, despite the fact the trend is poor, and we've commented about Gerrard and the team and the style of play, despite all that, it's the lack of goals. And I just think if Sarr could bring, I'd have to go for somebody attacking wise. That's probably why I went for Rach Daly. But being serious, Sarr.
No, I'm going to say in terms of, I think Will might be the only person around the virtual table that will get this reference. And if he doesn't, it's going to be a very short anecdote. But when me and Will were in our younger days, our childhood days, there was a cartoon called The Hurricanes. Do you remember that, Will? Or not? It was about a fictional football team who they had their enemies were like an evil Birmingham City type team. It was kind of in the mid-90s. But the first episode was there was a great female striker, but she couldn't play in the team because it was a men's team. So she put on a wig and a fake moustache, played in the big game, scored the winner, then revealed she was a woman, and they let her play after all. We could get Rachel Daly playing like that into the main team. But on more serious matters, Will, is a serious, realistic signing for you or not?
Yeah, I think Ismail Yassar is a realistic signing. It's a shame it didn't go through before. So from me, it would be a thumbs up. Yeah, realistic signing.
Obviously, yes from Will. Connor, is Sarr a realistic signing for you?
I agree with Will as well. It was meant to come anyway in the first place, but then for some reason the personal terms didn't happen. So hopefully January time he might come back again and definitely sign. Yes, I'll go for Sarr.
There you go. Yes from Connor. Liam, yes for you.
Yeah, Ismail Sarr, I think he's a cracking player, very direct, probably adds a little bit of width that we need, and can play across that front three. So yeah, absolutely.
There you go. Coming close to the clean sweep for you, Dave. No pressure. Sarr, realistic for you?
It's definitely realistic. Yeah, we need a bit of pace as well, and we need someone who can score goals. I mean, so for whatever reason it fell apart, I'm sure the truth won't be let out, but I have an idea. They'll be getting the stretch limo up the, I don't know what road goes from Watford to Birmingham. You'll have to tell me that, but I would suggest that as it came so close and we've struggled up front, that it's probably the most likely one to happen. Yeah.
There you go. And I'll complete the set for you, Russell. I think it's a realistic signing. Depending on the circumstances of why it didn't happen last time, maybe on a personal level, slightly concerned if we went in for him. But yeah, it's certainly realistic. And, you know, in terms of, you mentioned the firepower, in terms of time of recording, 6 goals in 7 games, one of the worst striking records in the Premier League, despite our attacking players we do have. So yeah, I think the more firepower would be welcome. For you, Will, who's your one realistic signing to turn our season around?
I think, you know, there's a few names that are going through my head. I won't divulge them just in case anybody else says them. And you're also thinking realistic. Is it realistic now in the situation that we're in at the Villa? But the name I'm going to go with is a player who has been heavily linked. I think we could see us going back in for him again. He's the type of midfielder who has flourished in the Midlands previously and also flourished in claret and blue. I would like to see Conor Gallagher come to the Villa and playing in midfield for us if we could get him, because he's not really playing for Chelsea apart from getting sent off in the off game. So he's my signing who I personally think would be realistic to bring in to the starting 11 and the team.
There you go, Conor Gallagher. Liam, realistic for you?
Yeah, I think he's had a very, very poor start at Chelsea. I've actually followed Chelsea quite closely, and in particular Gallagher. Probably maybe not a signing, but I think he's definitely a loan option. Chelsea would be willing to do a bit of business there, and with a new manager coming in, he's going to want to impress.
There you go. For you, Russell, is Conor Gallagher realistic? And second question, as Liam went for there, would you sign him?
A massive advantage to Conor Gallagher, if we make the presumption that he's not going to get the games and therefore not going to make the England World Cup squad, he'll be one of those players who's fresher. I think we're going to see a completely different season for the second half of the season than the first. I think there are 15 games before the World Cup break. Players are going to come back shattered mentally and physically from that World Cup, the ones who go deep into the World Cup, some of the star names from the bigger Premier League clubs. So I think we'll see that. And if Conor doesn't go, big advantage. Got a guy who's fresh and could do it for us. Yeah.
Realistic signing? Do you think we've got a chance, especially if he doesn't go to the World Cup?
If I was Potter, then I would say no chance, go away. I want to keep him. And Potter's a shrewd guy, obviously. So perhaps they're not that realistic. Why would the manager want to let one of his key talents go? But,
so that is a good point about
Potter. May be a Villa fan.
Yeah, maybe you'll send us Chukwuemeka back, for a bit of a discount. Though, how about you, Dave? Do you think it's worth picking up the phone to Graham Potter to inquire as for Gallagher?
It depends how short term we're thinking. I agree 100% with Russell. I don't think Potter's gonna let him go. I don't think Gallagher really wants to leave Chelsea permanently. I know Crystal Palace was trying to sign him, and it was a no. I think we could get him on loan if he's not getting the games there. But if we get him on loan, are we just papering over the cracks? And then we lose him at the end of the season, and we're going to have to start again. We've to find someone to fill that gap. So, think he's a great player. I think he's going to be a great player. He's going to be an England international for years. I would sign him. Realistically, I don't think it's going to happen.
What about you, Connor? Well, what are you thinking about Gallagher?
I think since day one, I think Conor Gallagher was definitely top of my list, 100%. But with Thomas Tuchel at the time at Chelsea, if Conor was there, probably Tuchel would let him go anyway. To probably come to whatever other team. But with Graham Potter, as what Russell was saying, he's a great upcoming manager, and I can see he's going to try and say to Conor, well, we can probably keep it all. If you want game time, well, take you out on loan and see what happens after that. And I think probably the best thing for us, I'd say. Well, my heart was saying a permanent deal to definitely get in, but my mind saying, well, if Potter's at Chelsea now, it might be just a loan, which I still take anyway. So good player.
Yeah, I mean, for my point, I'd probably agree with the Potter point in respect of, but if it comes to January, perhaps, and if Potter isn't playing, Gallagher doesn't rate him. But I think, yeah, it's a good point from Russell in terms of even if Potter isn't entirely sold on Gallagher, if he doesn't go to the World Cup, then the fact he's just going to be fit is going to be an advantage for the second half of the season. Maybe next summer might be a more realistic time in terms of if we're going to nip in there and take him. How about you, Liam, in terms of one signing that you would make to try and shoot us up the table?
Sarr was the first guy that jumped to my head, but I've got another guy who we've been linked to for 3 windows, who I think absolutely fits the need that Villa have. He's a guy who can assist from the middle, from wide, from deep. He's a good leader. Another guy who's probably unlikely to make it to the World Cup, but James Ward-Prowse, I think, is absolutely a player that if we give the right money, they're probably on a downward spiral at the moment. Hasenhüttl, I mean, that they've brought in some young players. Not sure that experiment's going to work out. But I'm a massive James Ward-Prowse fan. I think he's an absolute threat from set pieces. And he is something that we need. I think we talk about how McGinn maybe hasn't been up to scratch, and I think he is a direct replacement to go in directly into that middle and almost play the pivot position, and he's a leader on the field, so he would be a guy that I would be really interested in.
Yeah, but I know you've had an opinion or two about, well, Southampton and also James Ward-Prowse previously. Well, what are you thinking about signing Prowse now? Realistic? Would you go for it?
This moment in time, I don't think it is, because I think he's such a key player. But when they get relegated, Liam, at the end of the season, then I think James Ward-Prowse is a more realistic signing. Now, I'll be completely honest with you. You threw me at first when you said the last few windows. I thought you meant Javier Saviola, because we've been linked with him for years. So James Ward-Prowse was a nice surprise. Come again, same as Gallagher. I think come the end of the season, if we can get a player of his calibre in, a leader, that'd be great. And I think at the end of the season, he's a realistic signing. At the moment, though, it's the same as that Gallagher sort of, maybe not, because you don't want to lose a key player who's got a long time on their contract at the moment. But end of the season, James Ward-Prowse, claret and blue, yes, please.
No. How about you, Connor? Well, what are you thinking about Ward-Prowse?
Yeah, James Ward-Prowse, I think he's definitely one of the best midfielders in the Premier League, definitely up there. And he's such a good set piece taker, like what David Beckham used to do years ago. So that's a big plus on that. And I think, yeah, he'd be a great signing if we do get him in the summer, because realistically, I don't really see Southampton surviving if they keep buying younger players. Yeah, and I think if they did get relegated, yeah, I'd say we go for him 100%. Get the money in the bank. There we go. Job done. Yeah.
And so I sense I'm one of more the optimists about Southampton. I mean, it's not a Southampton podcast, so I won't go too much into it. But I think they'll do all right. You know, I think they could have taken the lead against us if everybody wasn't trying to outcompete each other to be so terrible. And I like their policy of buying youth, but we'll see at the end of the season in terms of whether that was a pipe dream on my part or whether they will be able to turn it around. But back to Villa matters, Russell, restore some order in terms of James Ward-Prowse. Realistic for you? Would you have him?
I loved Will's comment, was lovely. When they get relegated. If Southampton don't get relegated, I think he would stick with them. It depends what they do with Ralph. I mean, they've stuck with Ralph through thick and thin, some terrible results, and he's managed to do very well, in effect, keeping them up, when morale must have been shattered 2 or 3 times, and he's done all right there. But I'd be surprised if Ward-Prowse left. But a new manager, yeah. Does the new manager want to keep him? Most likely, yes, but There's no romance in modern football. It's all about money. So yeah, let's just offer him whatever he wants to move to a top half of the Premier League side.
And yeah, we're going to the bank to withdraw for Sarr. So, just get a few more notes out of the cash machine while we're there for Ward-Prowse. Though, Dave, I'm going to tee you up for a double here in terms of what are your thoughts about Ward-Prowse, and also who's your one suggested signing?
Okay, so my thoughts. I made a little list on this one beforehand, and one of the names on it was James Ward-Prowse. And the reason why I came to the conclusion that it won't happen is because I did a little Google, and his new contract, and he's on 100 grand a week, and it's a 5-year deal. Now, I know if there's enough money thrown at someone, anything can happen. But our owners tend to be quite shrewd in their signings. I even though there's reports we're overpaying for players, I think we're getting players for relatively decent amounts and not going crazy with our transfers. I think Southampton are going to look for something crazy. There was speculation during the summer, and I think the figure bandied about if Man United were interested, and it was 75 million, and that cooled that talk. So I think he's a good player, and he'd do well with us. I think we'd have to throw far too much money out to get him, and more money than he's actually worth. So I'm going to say probably not. The player that I would have back, and again, I'm not too sure how realistic this is, but you never know. One of our former players, really huge role played in our promotion and that great 10 game winning streak. It's Connor. No, it's not Connor. It's Tammy Abraham. I mean, of our time in the championship, for me, he was probably our him and Grealish were our best players, and maybe McGinn as well. He was, did a huge amount, but the combination of them up front, it was terrific. He's over in Roma. How long is he going to stay over there? He's going to want to come back to England at some point. Would his kind of affinity and connection to the fans swing us? I'm kind of thinking maybe not, but I'd love him. I'd love him in a Villa jersey.
So, well, if Mourinho gets a taste of being in music videos, like he recently turned up in a Stormzy video, then maybe while he's distracted doing that, we might be able to sneak in with a bid. I mean, in terms for me personally, would I have him? Absolutely, definitely. I mean, I think in terms of he'd be a great addition to the squad at this stage. I think the fact Roma, they in European competition this season. I think they won the whichever.
Right,
was it the one below? Like last season, they won the one below the conference Europa Conference League.
Yeah,
I think it'd be an uphill struggle to persuade him to come to Villa. I think at this point, but if he did want to come, absolutely, definitely, I'd find a space for him. Though we'll see if Will is going to be more optimistic than me. Do you think Abraham's realistic?
Do you know, I'd love to say that I thought he was, and I think I think we'd have an advantage in many ways now that Roma have brought in Dybala and they brought in Belotti, who are two phenomenally good Serie A strikers, and Tammy Abraham has been as well. But I think he drops down the pecking order. I think I know that there was an esteemed pundit on this show who said that Ivan Toney will probably go to the World Cup, and that could be happening. So he could be nudging ahead of Tammy Abraham as well. I do, however, for as much as I'd love Abraham to join us, the only way is if we get into Europe next year. And if someone was going to get him at the moment, you'd probably see a Man United ahead of us because they need a striker, don't they? Or the other teams that are in Europe, which I think there aren't really many other Premier League teams in Europe that do need an out-and-out striker. So that may be in our favour as well. Let's give it a yes. Yeah, well, why not?
There you go.
Come on.
Persuaded yourself.
Yeah, we did. Well done, Dave, for persuading me. That reverse psychology.
It works a charm. Though, did it work on you, Russell? Do you think Abraham's a realistic signing for you? Would you have?
He'd be near his brother. His brother's playing for Walsall, isn't he?
Yep.
Don't someone have a typo and accidentally signed Timmy Abraham for a huge amount of money?
Unrealistic in my mind, but happily easily persuaded when
Boo.
Roma.
So,
When-
well,
When Roma finish halfway down Serie A, yeah, unlikely.
so 10 minutes with Will. That might be some persuasion going place. But for you, Liam, do you need some persuasion as well? Or do you think Abraham is a realistic target for you?
I think Will's probably right in regards to coming next summer if we were to do anything. I'm not sure how long Dybala is out injured for. He got injured in last week's warm up against Atlanta, so they're going to want him sticking around. But yeah, I think the love interest there is always something that might bring him back. Whether he comes back with Jack not being there, or you never know, Jack might be back if rumours are to be believed. But yeah, I think it's probably unrealistic for now.
Though I'm going to continue with the doubling up theme with you, Connor. So, do you think that Abraham is realistic? And then throw in your proposed signing after you've given us your thoughts on Abraham.
Okay. For me personally, with Abraham, it was, I think, definitely one of my favourite strikers since it was at Villa in the Championship, and that was great because he won the playoff final, and he was mainly the top scorer with 26 goals. And I thought to myself, after now we need to sign him permanently, like straight away after the playoffs. But I knew we couldn't still because I think if we bought a lot of players, and then financially, that might be a bit of a gamble. But you never know. Next summer, as what Will and Liam said, you never know. If we needed another striker to help Danny and Watkins, then yeah, for sure, we can get Tammy as well for competition at front, and then probably my personal hopefully going in. I don't know if it'll be in January or next summer. I'll probably just stick with Tammy as a personal signing. Yeah.
There you go. Two votes for Tammy. And, hopefully if we are in a position next summer to be signing Abraham, then that means that things have gone well for Villa on the rest of the season. And we'll come to our predictions for the rest of the season a bit later on. But I'm going to throw in my signing. In terms of, do I think this signing would improve our team? Absolutely 100%. Do I think it's realistic? 6 months ago, no. 2 months ago, no. Now, maybe in a moment where catching a team at their real low point, and if we snuck in quickly, it would rely upon us overpaying. I would say if we're going to get him now, we 100% have to overpay, because otherwise it'd be having some better offers. Teams higher up the table, not better. But the player I'd go for, he would walk straight into our team, I think. Yuri Tillemans at Leicester. So maybe a bit of a curveball. Dave, am I pipe dreaming here in terms of Tillemans, or is there a reality where that could be deemed realistic?
No, because actually he was one of the other players I looked at, and he's in the last year of his contract. So this could actually happen. So if we were shrewd, we could get a deal in January for him. And he'd be absolutely huge for us, I think, and just kind of being that, that midfielder to the glue to bring all the kind of various parts that aren't working together. So I think you're onto something, Baz. Baz, as you're on me now, and I hate to take the mantle from you, I've got a cranky baby. I'm gonna have to go. I've got your question. Can I just deliver it now, and I listen to it when I listen back to the upload of this show? Are you all right? Sorry to completely take over the podcast for a moment.
You walk out with a mic drop.
Mic drop, yeah. Yep. So Baz, my question for you, and you can do the Tillemans thing, and I'll be listening back with intent to everyone. You have a bit of a reputation for being a bit negative about Villa, and I'm wondering. I just thought when I got Baz, why is this? Why? And I'm just thinking, is the team or the manager, when we first support Villa, does that actually affect how we think about our team and the expectations we have for them? So I'm intrigued to know, Baz, when you first started supporting Villa, how were we doing? Who was our manager? And has that affected things? So hold on to that one. Guys, you can go and discuss Tillemans. And if you're watching on the video,
here comes it. Yeah, there goes the mic drop. And that is a great way to leave, to be fair. Great question. Even better mic drop. Though, thank you for joining us, Dave. Hope your soothing words settle the baby. And it doesn't work on this show.
It's all right, Dave.
The mic is okay.
But
See you guys. It's been a pleasure.
Yep.
Yeah,
Always a
bye.
pleasure. Thanks for being on, Dave. Great
You
question.
realise that he's only really going to watch Ireland, Scotland.
Yes,
Nothing to
that's
do.
right. Yeah, just want to get us settled. It's got 15 minutes before
Yeah,
kick-off.
well, you know, it's all about priorities. Well, to today's question, who was manager when I first started watching Villa? It was Ron Atkinson. And funnily enough, if I was going to have the pure kind of flippant answer, well, not flippant. The first game I watched live at Villa Park was before football began, so before the Premier League. I think it was April 1992. We were at home to QPR. QPR won. I think it was 2-0, and we were pretty terrible from what I can remember. So you could say you were set then in terms of first game. We were terrible. We lost. That's the way it goes. But no, the first season I really remember was 92-93. And we were in a title battle up until the very end of the season. And I suppose when you're younger, and if that's all you know, you kind of think, well, this is what we do every season. Next season, we won the League Cup, beat Man United in the final, where absolutely nobody gave us a chance. I think in terms of even the Birmingham Post, as it was then, or the Birmingham Mail, predicted Man United to win in the preview. So not even the local papers were following us there. And I was actually at Wembley that day. I remember going there, and that was a great day. But since then, it's been a bit up and down. I mean, I wouldn't say I was negative. I'd just say in terms of, well, I was, I'd been a season ticket holder in the Paul Lambert, Alex McLeish era is enough to knock optimism out of even the most glass half full souls amongst us. But I'd say in terms of you enjoy the good times more when you don't expect them, and I certainly don't expect very many of them watching Villa. But in terms of, hopefully that answered your question, Dave. Hopefully it was worth the listen back through the first hour of that podcast, because I'm sure you did not fast forward just to that bit. But we're not going to fast forward in terms of the Tillemans question. So, Connor, my Tillemans suggestion, realistic for you? Would you have him?
Oh, I did like the idea, to be honest, about Tillemans. I think he was another kind of player for me. I thought, he'd be another good player in midfield to help us definitely push up more towards strikers. And I did hear reports recently of Arsenal potentially the end of the season might be getting him, but you never know. As with Gerard's persuasion, normally you can bring in decent players in, so you never know. Could give a call to Tillemans and hopefully make it happen. Yeah.
There you go. So if I'm negative and I'm predicting Tillemans, then Will, that must mean you're all aboard the Tillemans hype train.
I think if Connor's correct, then it's win-win for you, isn't it? If we or Arsenal sign him, because you're a closet Arsenal fan, as we all know, and you've been bringing a lot of Chelsea into this as well recently also.
Well, you got to spread the bets.
Let me tell you, I think he probably is a little bit more realistic than we thought, to be honest, at the moment, and going towards the end of the season as well. We probably have to offer him quite a bit of money, a 6-figure sum on a weekly basis. But what a great addition he will be next summer when we've got Conor Gallagher and James Ward-Prowse alongside him, supplying those goals for Javier Saviola and Freddie Adu. Will be right up there, top of the league, let me tell you. Those are a bit of glory days, and you'll be crying, thinking, why am I so negative?
Well, get Cherno Samba up there as well, and then we're absolutely flying in terms of
Tommy
manager
Swindle,
players.
Tommy Swindle, Larson,
Yep.
proper little diamond. You know what I mean?
Yeah, dominating. Though, for you, Russell, Tillemans, I'm beginning to believe it myself now. Do you need me to drag? Are you going to drag me back down, or are you?
I'm back to my point about there's no romance in modern football. It's all about money and the wish to play at the highest level. So look at the league table at the end of this season. Arsenal top 4, Chelsea 6th or 7th. I think he'd pick Arsenal. And also, speaking to a very good friend of mine who's an Arsenal fan, was debating with him about the Dougie situation. And he said their biggest failing of the summer window was not getting a midfielder. I think they are highly motivated, incentivized to get an additional midfielder either January or next summer. So look out, Tielemans in the Arsenal squad. But, sadly, because where are we going to finish? Yes, I know we can debate this in 5 minutes' time, but where are we going to finish to attract players?
I think the one thing for us, though, and I think we all would agree with this, and Dave does agree, he's nodding his head as he's listening back to the audio. Who would have said that we'd have got Kamara at the start of the season? Who'd have said we'd have got Carlos as well, being the names that they are and being who we have been for the last however many years? Because whilst history is on our side, we're not a force to be reckoned with at the moment just yet. And I don't mean to go full Baz on you there, but we're not. So why not? Why can't we attract these people, especially if we've got Gerrard and we're grinding out these results and we're getting a bit closer at the table? He's just got a knack, hasn't he, of breaking into people's houses and forcing them to sign. So maybe he can do that with Tielemans as well.
There you go. Liam, do you think you're going to have to be donning the balaclava to get Tielemans to sign, or do you think it might be more realistic just to invite his agent for a chat?
Yeah, unfortunately, I can't see it happening. I think I wanted him big time in the summer, and I think it was probably an option if Villa had moved on it. But the fact that he can probably sign a contract with someone in January means that he's going to be going elsewhere, unless he's really enjoying living in the Leicester area and being part of the Midlands. Maybe is something that he wants to keep up family-wise. But I think Arsenal is probably a likely destination, or he's going to move back to France. Is probably the thing that's going to happen with him. But he is a fantastic player, and again, when we're talking about that player who we think that John McGinn should be, I think that's where Tielemans probably fits in really, really well. That guy who's going to be box to box and also giving us the protection in front of the back line. Definitely, he's a cracking player, but I just can't see it, I'm afraid.
There you go. The hopes were cruelly dashed. And before we ask our final question from the talk of the Trinity perspective, we've got our final pundit question. If I have ticked them all off correctly, and it is for you, Liam, from Connor. So Connor, what is your Villa question for Liam?
I might go for a current question, because I didn't do a lot of good research for it because I've just gone back to college. So bear with me on this question now. So this could be favourite, like the top 5 favourite Villa memory if you've been to a match or in the cup final to watch Villa. Do you have any top 5 favourites?
Oh, top 5's probably a hard one to dig out. One of my, I've got 2 that jump out. Actually 3. One of my earliest memories when we were talking about it is the League Cup, the 1996 Coca-Cola Cup against Leeds. I remember, and if I'm not mistaken, that was very, very close to the 26th of March, purely because it was my brother's birthday, and there was a birthday party going on, and I was sneaking down to our front room to try and watch the game instead of being part of the festivities. So that was a great one. One of our first games in Europe against CSKA Moscow. Me and a friend of mine flew over to Birmingham to watch that, and that was a cracking match as well. Martin O'Neill, it's a pity we didn't go over there and finish the job. And probably my most recent one, I haven't been to Villa in quite a while, was seeing the Conor Horan hat-trick against Norwich, and it was probably the debut match or debut start for Keenan Davis, who I'm a massive fan of, and still are thinking he might have a possible career at Aston Villa, although looking unlikely. But they would be my 3 definite ones. I think 2 more ones probably from pulling at straws, just any game Benteke was playing. And then I seen Aston Villa come over for a little mini tournament in Ireland where they played against Leeds, and I think it was St. Pat's and maybe Shamrock Rovers. Not 100% sure who that was. So there's 5 memories that come to mind very quickly. Good question though.
There you go. And some good questions from all of our panelists there. And speaking of good questions, one final question. Now we're going to go round. Regular listeners will know, as I mentioned earlier, the pre-season preview, me and Will predicted Villa to come 8th in the Premier League. In the true play your cards right style, we're going to go around the room and you got to go higher or lower and give us your prediction, unless you've predicted 8th as well, in which case, welcome to the club. So, Russell, get my best Bruce Forsyth on. Is it going to be higher or is it going to be lower than 8th?
End position, or what I said at the start of the season. Where are you coming from? End of the season.
Yeah, in terms of game 38 of the season, will we be higher or lower than 8th, or will we be 8th?
I was definitely in the 8, 9, 10, and even my heart thought, oh, we get a push on, we can finish 7th. I really believed that at the start of the season. That was back to my point about hope and despair and all, and the hope was there. I think we could still finish 8th or 9th. If you look at our 8 games before the World Cup break, at least 4 of them are very winnable. Plus, we owe Man United a win against Man United at Villa Park for the first time since '95. Imagine winning 5 matches and those last 8. I know, yes, I want to go full optimism, full positive Baz here. We will, with the number of points that would bring us pre-World Cup break, we would be probably 8th, 7th or 8th. So, yeah, it's doable. So I'll say stick with 8.
There you go, though. For you at the start of the season, Liam, firstly, were me and Will being deluded? Was 8th on your mind? And at the end of the season, do you think, like Russell, that we can be there or thereabouts?
I think we all had this, what Russell said, we all had that hope. I possibly was more on from our pre-season. I wasn't as convinced as everyone else was in our pre-season. I think we had a couple of late goals and a couple of things that maybe papered over the cracks of what our pre-season kind of looked like. But I'm going to go and say we're 14th, guys. I don't see this season going well. I think we've lost some vital players. I think we are now back into a squad that Gerrard had last year that he said wasn't good enough. We've got probably Nakamba that maybe comes back into the team. Don't know. But my biggest issue, and I know one of the questions was possibly about the biggest disappointment of the year, it's the fact that we're not learning from things. We're not learning from our mistakes. We've still got a team that is tactically inept. We still have players that probably shouldn't be starting. We are still conceding goals either straight from kickoffs or from when we score our own goals. And I don't have a lot of hope for this season going forward. I think it's going to be a very, very disappointing 14th. And I don't know whether Gerrard will be the man on the touchline on that game 38, I'm afraid.
We still got Danny Ings, though. So at least that's something. But yes, I mean, in terms of, will Gerrard be at the touchline at the end of the season? I think it'll be an interesting one if we reconvene in January as to whether he's there in January. I mean, and then the end of the season. Russell, you mentioned those games coming up. I think that is absolutely integral for Gerrard's future. 4 wins, that'd be minimum, really. And anything less than that, I think he'd be in real trouble before the World Cup, especially if there is a former Villa youth legend of Pochettino still available to go into that manager's dugout. But for you, Connor, higher or lower than 8th? What are you thinking?
I think for every Villa fan's mind over pre-season was looking like, we're going to try and finish higher. With the quantity new players that we brought in, thought, definitely now could try and go definitely 6th or probably 5th place in the Premier League. But unfortunately, it hasn't been the best start as what we mentioned so far today in this podcast. But I try my best not to be too negative as well. I need to try and be more positive as a Villa fan. That's what we need to do, sit together. I think at the minute, potentially 10th. Or probably 9th.
There we go.
9th. It could be 10th or 9th place, I think. Yeah.
I'd say, well, me and Will, we will ride those 8th place predictions wherever it will take us to the end of the season. Although for Will's weekly predictions, good news for everybody to end the show. We're actually unbeaten with a 100% record, having scored 40 goals in the first 7 games. So, a couple more weeks and, we've got Champions League football sewn up before the World Cup. So, in that time frame, things will be looking good and positive. And that's it. In terms of, we've gone through Villa past, present, looked into the future as well in terms of the state of Villa after 7 games of this Premier League season. No doubt we will reconvene at some point during the season after the World Cup. We'll see if Southgate is available for dinner parties. But in the meantime, thank you very much to all of our guests. I hope Dave is enjoying the Ireland-Scotland game going on at the moment, but we will wrap up to let Liam go and watch that John McGinn special, no doubt, unfolding wherever that is. So thank you to Liam for joining us. Thank you to Russell, battling through a hurricane to come and join us. That is commitment. Thank you to Connor for coming on the show. Really appreciate you all on. And if you want more Villa content, then you can go and check out our Twitter page at Talk Trinity, whereby we will be keeping you up to date with all the Villa news, more polls. I mean, we may even put a poll up there to see who the Villa Twitterverse would invite to their Villa dinner party. I mean, it is an international week. We need to fill the time. We need to get the Villa content out there somehow. You can check out our previous YouTube episodes on our YouTube channel, Talk of the Trinity, or you can listen to our audio versions of the podcast on Apple, Spotify, Google, Amazon, some other places. We're on FanHub. But before I go to the dry cleaners to pick up my trousers that I spilt beer over, may I say thank you very much to all our listeners, viewers, followers, subscribers. Really do appreciate it. And before I pass you over to Mr. Trinity himself, thank you very much for listening, and we'll be with you again soon.
Again, cheers, Tar. Thank you very much to Russell there. Soon ready to rumble with a hurricane. I'm sure you'll be okay. And we look forward to you telling us all about that next time you're on, if you want to. To Connor, thank you for coming on. Keep captaining the Villa. Keep getting those assists like the 2 that you did against Redditch United at Villa Park the other night. Liam, I'm still waiting for my invite, obviously, for November, but it's okay. Don't worry about it. I know it's in the post. Dave, well, you buggered off, so there's no point. No, thank you for being on, as per usual. And Baz, it's always a pleasure. We look forward to having plenty more conversations towards the end of the season. And to all the Villa fans that are listening, you've got a choice. You can either be a positive Baz, positive after peeing on a stick, or you can be a positive like the rest of us. We're going to win the league. We're going to get James Ward-Prowse. We're going to get Yoris Hillemans. We're going to get Conor Gallagher. And Javier Saviola is going to bang in all the goals next season. Yes, Villa are finishing top. And I won't hear anything else. Danny Ings, top scorer. What? Yeah, of course. Cheers. Thank you very much. And Villa till I die. Up the Villa.